Mr. Hice for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gruenberger, let me ask you your opinion and that overall of the FDIC. Should banks be national, or is there a need for local community banks?
Oh, I think community banks play a critical function in our financial system and economy, Congressman.
I do too, and yet they're closing all over the place, and they're not being approved all over the place. Do you believe that there are too many banks in this country?
Certainly not too many community banks, and we could use more community banks.
What about banks as a whole?
No, we have a strong banking system in the United States today.
Are there too many?
No, I don't think so.
Does the FDIC in any way have a strategy, a plan, a policy for consolidation in the banking sector?
No, sir.
And yet banks are being swallowed up by bigger banks.
You know, there's been a...
Are you saying that's all coincidental?
There's been a 30-year process in the United States of gradual consolidation within the banking industry, both at the large institutions as well as at the community banks.
Does the FDIC have any role in that, either through policies or in any way would you think FDIC is responsible or has a role in that consolidation?
I think deposit insurance is something that's viewed as actually supportive and beneficial for community banks. And going back to 1933, when the FDIC was created, the strongest advocates for deposit insurance were by community banks to put them in a stronger position to compete with the larger institutions.
Do you believe that competition in the market is important?
Critical, yes, sir.
Should consumers have options when it comes to banks?
Yes.
They're getting fewer and fewer options. We're all certainly watching that. Let me, for a quick moment, Mr. Browning, let me go to you. Your written testimony estimates that it would cost nearly $1 million for the application process. How much would this have cost, do you think, had you gone the entire way through the process?
Congressman, I think that is an unanswerable question, unfortunately. We went through a very protracted process, spending a great deal of time and money. As I mentioned, we spent nearly $1 million. We had $30 million in capital to put into the bank, showing a plan that was profitable in year one. But we came to a conclusion that we could not actually achieve the end of the process. If we saw a light at the end of the tunnel, we stood ready to make reasonable changes, but we felt like we were shadow boxing and could not get clarity on what was actually required and did not want to pour good money after bad.
So your experience is that the cost involved certainly affected not only you, but other interested candidates out there would struggle over the cost of the process.
Certainly the cost of the process, but perhaps more importantly, the ambiguity and indeterminate process. There wasn't a
no light at the end of the tunnel, as you described. Your written testimony also mentions that the FDIC felt like there was no community need for your bank. Do you have any idea what the definition is of a community need?
Well, I certainly know the historical application of that, and it's spelled out in the statutory requirements within the Federal Deposit Insurance Act. And for our application, our community were clients, retail clients, coast to coast, that needed basic banking services in conjunction with their brokerage accounts. This was a built-in customer base, and these are just mom-and-pop retail investors. That was our community. The new interpretations or new suggestions were unknown to us.
Did the FDIC explain to you what their interpretation of community need was?
No, they did not give an explicit interpretation of what it was, but they suggested what it was not. They suggested that our existing customer base was not adequate, that serving consumer demand for banking services that we had a personal relationship with was not a sufficient justification to charter a bank.
Who's best to make that determination, the FDIC or those in the local community, as to what the community need is for a bank?
I think those in the local community, and I would also look at some of the regional offices of FDIC who have experienced expert staff on the ground in the local real economies, that they have a very good grasp, where I think it's much more difficult to regulate strictly from Washington. But certainly local business people enmeshed in the community are certainly the best testament to what those community needs are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I think